Hey everyone, and welcome to another Explainer. Today we are taking a really fascinating journey into the East to decode what is honestly one of the most sophisticated systems of logic and epistemology ever created. We're looking at the Yamaka. Now, if you're sitting there thinking ancient religious texts are just, abstract philosophy or dusty old books of faith, well, we're about to change that perspective entirely. I want you to look at this not as some simple ancient manuscript, but as an incredibly advanced, meticulously designed logical algorithm. And it has the singular, relentless purpose to systematically dismantle the very illusion of the self and the cycle of rebirth.
Okay, let's dive into this agenda and give you a clear blueprint of how we'll navigate this. First up, we'll see how this text acts as a weapon destroying ignorance. Next, we'll break down the mechanism of paired logic, and then look at its three-dimensional structure. After that, we'll be decoding 7 specific phenomena, and finally, we'll show how all of this maps directly to Vipassana.
All right, Section 1, Weapon Destroying Ignorance, Beyond Abstract Philosophy.
So scholars actually describe the Yamaka, which by the way is Book 5 of the Abhidhamma, as a tool to purify wisdom. It's not just asking you to blindly believe in something. Not at all. It's explicitly designed as a systematic intellectual weapon to destroy false views. It literally strips away all our hardwired everyday assumptions about who we are and our actual place in the cycle of existence.
To really grasp how it pulls this off, we have to look at its name. Yamaka translates to pairs, and that is the core operating system of this whole text. It's this relentless method of asking a question and then immediately answering it in reverse. Why do that? To completely eliminate any chance of misinterpreting ultimate truths. It's a massive undertaking, too. It spans an incredible 120 panavara. To put that in perspective, a panavara is an ancient unit of text measurement, and 120 of them makes this a monumental piece of work, with Part 1 serving as the absolute central core of the analysis.
Moving right along to Section 2, Mechanism of Paired Logic, the Buddhist logical language. Natural human language is, it's incredibly ambiguous, right? We use these sweeping generalizations all the time, which naturally leads to philosophical errors. To solve this, the Yamaka literally creates its own precise Buddhist logical language. And it's wild because when modern scholars analyze how this ancient text maps the relationships between different states of reality, they realize it functions exactly like modern mathematical set theory. It creates these rigid, clearly defined boundaries for every single concept.
Let's do a little mental gymnastics to see this in action. Think of how we might ask, are all baked goods cakes? Obviously not, right? Now apply that same strict logic to the human mind. The text asks what's known as an analoma, or a forward question. Are all wholesome things wholesome roots?
Now, what's really interesting about this is what happens when we add the patiloma, the reverse question. By immediately following up with, are all wholesome roots wholesome things? The text absolutely forces the mind to recognize the precise boundaries of each category. It expertly prevents you from making broad philosophical generalizations. A wholesome thing might be a good action, sure, but it isn't necessarily the psychological root of goodness. This paired logic acts just like a scalpel, perfectly separating concepts that our sloppy, everyday language usually just clumps together.
Section 3, Three-dimensional structure, analyzing the mind.
So the logic here isn't just linear, it has this incredibly deep architecture. The text maps reality across a distinct 3D Wara structure. It doesn't just stop at asking what something is. It analyzes phenomena across 3 entirely distinct dimensions. First, there's panati, which is the definition. Then pavati, which tracks its arising and ceasing through time. And finally, parina, which analyzes how the mind actually cognizes it. This complex 3-dimensional framework serves as the ultimate ancient prototype for deep cognitive and psychological analysis. It's literally examining reality from every conceivable angle.
All right, Section 4, Decoding 7 Phenomena, Slicing the Human Experience.
So what exactly is this logical engine processing? Well, Part 1 of the text takes the entirety of the human experience and slices it into 7 distinct categories of phenomena. And hey, don't worry, there's no pop quiz on these later, but they range from mula and khandha all the way to sankhara and anusaya. By running our entire existence through these 7 categories, using that strict paired logic we just talked about, the text systematically dismantles our clinging to the idea of a permanent self. Let's look a little closer at a few of these. In the khandha category, the text analyzes the 5 aggregates.
Through rigorous logical pairs, it proves that what we colloquially call life, or myself, is merely a temporary assembly of form, feeling, perception, mental fabrications, and consciousness. There's absolutely no permanent ego holding it all together. It's just components functioning together in a cluster.
Building on that, the Ayatana and Dhatu categories examine our sense bases and elements. Essentially, these are our mechanisms of perception. By defining exactly how seeing, hearing, and thinking arise from mechanical, biological, and psychological conditions, the text explicitly rejects the illusion of an immortal soul, or even the idea of an independent knower sitting inside your head pulling the levers. It is all just cause and effect.
So the crucial point is how this completely changes our view of reality. In the Sacca category, which analyzes the Four Noble Truths at an ultimate level, the logic is totally unflinching. It demonstrates that even the things we consider worldly happiness must logically be classified under the truth of suffering. Why? Simply because they are bound by impermanence. The joy literally cannot last, so clinging to it is fundamentally a mechanism of pain.
Now, to understand why we still cling despite knowing that pain, we turn to the Sankhara and Anusaya categories. Here, the Yamaka maps out the deep psychology of our latent defilements. These are things lying completely dormant in our minds, like sensual lust, pride, wrong view, and pure ignorance. It meticulously maps the relationship between these specific psychological defilements and the precise paths of wisdom required to completely, finally eradicate them.
Which brings us to Section 5, Map to Vipassana, the ultimate output.
Despite its immense complexity, scholars always emphasize one thing. This is not just logical theory meant to be debated in some dusty classroom. It is a precise, incredibly practical map for Vipassana, or insight meditation. By internalizing this strict logical framework, practitioners can accurately perceive the rapid arising and ceasing of mental states without misjudging or romanticizing their own minds. It basically keeps the meditator brutally honest.
And this brilliantly illustrates its historical placement in the Abhidhamma. You have Step 1, the Yamaka, where you master the microscopic, fundamental components of reality. Only then do you move to Step 2, the Mahapatana, which is the text that explains the 24 causal conditions and the macroscopic universe. The logic is crystal clear. You literally cannot understand the complex network of the universe until you can correctly identify and isolate the basic microelements of your own mind.
Ultimately, the Yamaka Prana serves as profound evidence that the Theravada Buddhist tradition is not merely a system of blind faith, it is an absolute intellectual powerhouse. It relies heavily on reason, strict mathematical logic, and the direct experiential proof of the human mind. It is, for sure, a true weapon of wisdom.
Which leaves us with a truly fascinating puzzle to solve in our own daily lives. If this ancient, brilliant, logical algorithm can systematically deconstruct every single part of yourself into temporary, interlocking conditions, who exactly is watching this explainer right now? Think about it. Thanks for joining me today, and keep questioning everything.